One Red Sox pitcher goes out the door, another one comes in. And we also try our best to end 2022 on a positive note.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Inzuski, here as always with my co-host, Lauren Willand, and it's been a very eventful last day or so. It's interesting. I was thinking about this prior to recording. I started yesterday's episode saying, it hasn't been very eventful, and wow, we're recording last night. Nathan Eovaldi gets signed to the Rangers, and Corey Kluber gets signed by the Red Sox this afternoon. And now there's some news. Now there's things that we can talk about, things that really make us start to think about what the full depth chart is going to look like going into 2023. But I wanted to start off talking about the Nathan Eovaldi signing. We sort of had an instant reaction, didn't expect that was going to happen when we were recording whatsoever. And, we sort of talked about it earlier in the episode that this happens to us a lot. But Nathan Eovaldi signs with the Texas Rangers, ended up getting $17 million a year. And interestingly enough, he also has a player option. So if he throws 300 innings from 2023 to 2024, and in 2024, he gets a $20 million option in 2025. And so the base contract was 2 years, $34 million, but the max is 3 years, $63 million. What was your reaction when you saw the numbers, Lauren?
Yeah, I think you made out pretty well. I'll be very interested to see if we know what the Red Sox offered him, if those numbers come out, if those numbers get reported, because he did reject the 19.65 qualifying offer from Boston to test free agency. And then there was that whole thing that there was a multi-year offer on the table for him from the Red Sox, and that never came to light. So I'll be very interested to see if those numbers come out. But good for him. He goes home to Texas. Now he gets to pitch with Jacob deGrom. And I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, the income tax or the state tax and that. Like, I wonder if ball players truly think about that. Like, yes, they do get taxed differently because just how much money they make. But I do wonder if that factors into any of their decisions. I genuinely would love to know. But good for Eovaldi. I mean, it's going to stink losing him because he did eat a lot of innings, even though he was injured. He was reliable at times, and he stepped up as the ace. The Red Sox still don't have an ace of this pitching staff, and you could still argue that it will be Chris Sale in 2023, but there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding his health and what he'll bring to the team next year. But good for Eovaldi. I'm happy for him. Sad to see him go, of course. I mean, he was pivotal in 2018, and who would have ever thought that his extension looked better than Chris Sale's when that all went down?
I definitely didn't, because when the Red Sox signed him to $17 million a year for 3 or 4 years, back after the 2018 World Series, I was sort of surprised that he got that deal, especially a guy coming over from the Toronto Blue Jays, who already had 2 Tommy John surgeries. He pitched relatively well during the regular season for the Red Sox, and the little time that he did have, obviously made a massive impact in the World Series. But that doesn't mean that you're going to go out and be worth that $17 million. But boy, was he. And the one thing that I thought about when the numbers all came out is I don't see the Red Sox giving him $17 million a year again in a second contract. I think in my mind it was 12 to $15 million. And as you mentioned, I'm very curious to see if those numbers do come out of that multi-year deal. It was reported that it was around 3 years or so. So I'm curious if that player option of $20 million played a factor into it as well. But the state tax, I don't think so whatsoever. I did find it funny when that did come out that Carlos Correa had just signed in California and Aaron Judge had just signed in New York, which the Boston is now in that sort of category of state tax, apparently, with the millionaires tax coming out. But I think that, you mentioned it, Game 3 World Series in 2018. That's what he's always going to be known for. But the one thing that most people forget is how much he stepped up in 2020 and also 2021. He was essentially the ace of this Red Sox team. You could also say 2019 as well. Erod was sort of the ace per se with Chris Sale out, but Eovaldi was always there at the top of the rotation and was always very reliable when you needed him. And also what he was able to do in the wild card game in 2021. I wouldn't have wanted any other pitcher on the mound against the Yankees in that spot. And so, I think it worked out perfectly. You could put, JD Martinez and Nathan Eovaldi in the same boat as being two of the most successful contracts for the Red Sox, at least in the past 10 years or so. But very happy to see him, be able to go home, as you mentioned. But tough to, not see him in a Red Sox uniform, at least for this next season, especially with how much help they really need at the top of their rotation.
Well, that's the thing. Like, they need pitching help. And yes, we'll get into their signing that they made on Wednesday, but if this was the plan, and this, I feel like we've said this with everybody that has left the Red Sox in this offseason, if you knew that there was going to be little to no chance of signing Eovaldi, why didn't you trade him or JD Martinez at the trade deadline? And we've asked that question before. So, I mean, maybe they did make a competitive offer, quote unquote, competitive offer to Eovaldi, and maybe he did just want to go home, but he did express interest in staying here. And when you desperately need pitching help, you have somebody who's familiar with the organization, who players really love. Alex Cora obviously loves Eovaldi a lot. So it's just another one of those things where it's like, what are we doing? Because you could have gotten something for him in return, or you could have just signed him for another year. But nothing is going the Red Sox way this offseason, to their own fault. That this is all they're doing. It's not like they're legitimately putting good offers out there for free agents or showing, legitimate competitiveness to try to sign these free agents or make big trades. This is their own fault, and we'll see how it ends up turning out. But I'm happy to see Eovaldi get paid this offseason. I'm excited to see what he does in Texas. I know Bryce over at Locked On Rangers is happy, so I hope they treat him well.
And that's one of the main things that we said right after the deadline was, if you're going to compete, then go all in and fix the bullpen at least. And if you're not going to, then just blow it up. And the one thing that I found curious was when you see on Twitter, or when you hear other people speak about Eovaldi and JD Martinez's value at that point. Obviously, we're not in those phone calls, we're not in those meetings when Chaim Bloom, the front office, is speaking with different teams. But at the same time, outside of Frankie Montas and Luis Castillo, after both of those guys were off the board, Nathan Eovaldi was looked at as the top guy on the starting pitching market, and especially with how valuable starting pitching is in the majors. You got to think that there had to have been suitors. Same with JD Martinez. He was one of the best DH options that there was out there on the market at the trade deadline. You're not telling me that the Dodgers weren't interested in him, but you're also not going to get, I think that they were looking for a major league player and a top prospect. You're not going to get that for JD Martinez with, 3 months left on his contract. That just doesn't make any sense. But, that's the big thing, especially, with the Kluber signing. Now it's just a rotation filled with, a fringe, one fringe number 2 starter and, multiple 3 or 4 starting pitchers. And, now that, the Red Sox did essentially do what we mentioned yesterday in our New Year's resolutions, they added another arm. I still think that you need one more. Maybe that means subtracting a guy like Nick Pivetta or a Tanner Houck out of the bullpen to get that number 1 starter. But, if this team truly wants to contend, not only for a playoff spot, but for a World Series, I can't really think of anybody in this current rotation that I would be super duper confident in saying, I want that guy at game 1, even though I think I said that yesterday, but even with Corey Kluber in the rotation now.
Yeah, I don't hate the Corey Kluber signing. It's, it's a 1-year deal, 10 million. I think it's 10 million guaranteed, and with an option for for 2024. So it's not
club options.
It's not a bad deal. It's just he's going to be 37 by the time the season starts, or right after the season starts. And I said this to you before we started recording, I would have loved this deal 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago in 2017. Obviously, you're not getting him for 1 year, 10 million in 2017, but and no, he's not the same pitcher he was when he was with Cleveland, those 2 Cy Youngs. He does have an impressive resume. There's no doubt about that, but he's an aging pitcher and kind of like I feel like everyone else in that rotation, you don't really know what you're going to get from him. Yeah. And I'm happy he's here. This team is very old. All of a sudden, this team is old, and it's weird saying these guys are old because in real life, in your my ages, they're not that old. But in baseball talk, this team is old, and it happened so fast. But I think Kluber will be fine in the rotation. It's a lot of guys in that rotation with a lot of what ifs. I think it was Julian McWilliams who tweeted that he's not sure if he's ever seen a rotation that has so many what ifs surrounding their players, and it's just so true. You have no idea. Chris Sale, James Paxton, what's Garrett Whitlock going to look like? What's Corey Kluber going to look like? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, he made 31 starts last year. Corey Kluber did. Yeah. That was good to see. He went 10-10, 4.34 ERA. Not the sexiest numbers, but there is upside there, and I think that maybe if we don't set our expectations to the highest degree, like we're Red Sox fans are used to doing, then maybe we'll be surprised by him. I hope we are. I'm trying to go into this like optimistic, but it's just like I said, I would have loved this deal years ago, and I don't hate it by any means, but I'm not sitting here saying that this is the move that puts the rotation over the edge. This is the move that makes this team super, super competitive and will keep them keep them up with the other teams in the AL East. It's almost Friday, right? It's almost Friday. My brain is melting slowly.
I think this is also a perfect reason with all those what ifs. Have a 6-man rotation. I mean, you got James Paxton in there. You have all those question marks with can Chris Sale pitch over 100 innings? What will Garrett Whitlock and Brian Bayo be able to do in 100 innings or so? I think that workload for all those pitchers of Sale, Bayo, and Whitlock is going to be too much for them if you only stick with a 5-man rotation. I wouldn't be surprised if you see some injuries here or there if you really put all that pressure on them, and especially with what we saw with Whitlock with his hip just being thrown in there. But I think that was also due to his inability to be able to build up his body to be able to be a starter. So now that he has the offseason, now that he has spring training, who knows? Things could be drastically different. But I think, the Kluber signing really also puts out a question. Michael Wacha coming back to the team this next season. Yep. But, I think as well, it's something that is positive to look at with Kluber is that he does have a lot of experience pitching at Fenway Park. And, there is a lot of pitchers who struggle with not only, the short porch or excuse me, the short fence. Yeah, I know. I messed up there.
Get the pitchforks out.
with the small dimensions at Fenway Park, not only in left field, but also in right field as well. It's difficult for some pitchers to be able to pitch there. And Kluber in his career has made, 7 starts at 3.35 ERA. And, even last season with the Rays, made 2 starts and only allowed 3 runs over 12 innings, striking out 9. So I think that, with what he's shown you in the last 2 seasons pitching in the AL East, he understands how to compete in this division. He understands what it takes, obviously, with the 2 Cy Youngs, but that's not the pitcher that you're going to be getting. And so very curious to see where they really put him in this rotation. Is he going to be number 2? Is it going to be Sale, Kluber, Pivetta? And then you got Whitlock at 4 and then Bayo at 5. I'm very curious to see how everything stacks up once opening day comes around.
Yeah, I am too. And listen, if these guys are healthy, and they show that and they live up to their potential, this is a good rotation. But there's just so many question marks around them and what they're going to bring to this team. How's Bayo going to do in his first full season, what we're going to assume his first full season with the Red Sox? How is Sale going to bounce back from all of his injuries that he had last year? And I mean, the biggest thing is staying healthy, which has been an issue for a lot of the Red Sox players. Nick Pivetta, we can probably count on him staying healthy, making every single start. I mean, he's a workhorse. And even though he doesn't always give you a flashy outing, he's going to be there every single start. So he does give you that stability and that reliability there. But what do you do if Garrett Whitlock struggles, a month into the season, 10 starts into the season. What do you do with him? What if Brian Bayo can't really find a groove? What's their plan? What's their backup plan? You do have a lot of pitchers, but are they going to be able to slide into the rotation? You mentioned the 6-man rotation. So you look at those names. Those are good names that you just mentioned. On paper, that's a good rotation on paper, but they need to live up to their potential. They need to make sure they stay healthy and just provide the Red Sox a chance to win, which the pitchers and the offense, the whole team struggled last year, but we saw a lot of the pitchers struggle with controlling their pitches and controlling the strike zone and just not having really any control of their pitches. So a lot of eyes are going to be on this rotation because it should be good, like I said, on paper, but there's so much what ifs. There's so many questions. And I don't know if there's a lot of confidence among fans that it's going to be a very strong rotation in the AL East.
Yeah, I don't think there is, but I do think that this is a better rotation than we saw last year. Quite honestly, a lot more. Reliable arms out there because you didn't really know what you were going to get from Walker. You didn't know what you were going to get from Hill. You knew that Chris Sale wasn't going to be there on day one. And one thing after I just thought about it quickly, I think with the 6-man rotation, if they do go that approach, maybe it might be best to see how the first month goes with five guys. See how James Paxton is able to come back. If he looks really good, if you think that he can be a starter, maybe think about a 6-man rotation. If you see Bayo, if you see Whitlock not being able to withstand, the workload, maybe start to think about that. But the one thing that I did want to mention with Kluber is that we saw him, become a drastically different pitcher, in my opinion, from the Yankees to the Rays last season. And, he was mainly a strikeout first pitcher, but that wasn't the case in 2022. His K per 9 dropped from 9.2 in 2021 with the Yankees to 7.6 in 2022. And one thing that, he really had to start doing is focusing more on his control to make sure that he was able to still get outs while not being able to strike out batters. And his walk per 9 also improved massively. It was at 3.7 in 2021 and 1.2 in 2022. So the good thing to know is with Corey Kluber, he might not strike out, tons of guys every single start, but boy, is he going to have great control and he's going to avoid the walks.
And that's important. We saw how many walks that pitchers gave up last year for the Red Sox and how many times walks got those guys into trouble. It's a good start. And I hope that carries over. I'd love to see the strikeouts go up a little more, but if you can control those walks and get the outs, then listen, you're doing your job. And I'm not going to be too picky about if you're not walking anyone and still getting those outs.
And I just wanted to take a sec to, look at some of what the fan reactions were. We put over on Twitter. How are we feeling about Kluber to the Sox? We had Just a Dude say it's a perfectly fine move. We saw Jared Freese, sorry, completely butchered that. He said desperate option. Then we saw IPH33 Knicks. I think that's the best way to say it. He said one word, settled. I actually like this comment. This front office needs to change quick. As a long life fan, I've never hated a team like this. Maybe I don't agree with it as much. I've zero faith that this team is going to be playing meaningful baseball in October for a while. I wouldn't really say that much, but I agree with the settled word. I think that, they looked at the market and maybe didn't see too many, not only viable options on the free agent market, but maybe in the trade market as well. Who knows? And then we got Lobster Bread. He said 4 to 5 starters and a 6-8 hole hitters. What could go wrong?
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
And then we got one fan that just doesn't really care anymore. We got mainly Red Sox. He said just really don't care anymore. It's meaningless. So that's what we got for you. Really looking forward to hearing your questions for our second segment in our Q&A, and to wrap up the year on a high and positive note, talking about the Boston Red Sox. But before we do that, Lauren just wants to take a second to talk to you about Drive Sober.
Yeah, and real quick, the one person who said settled, I think that the Red Sox did that on purpose because now they're like, well, look, we got the best reliever or the best pitcher that's left out there right now. He's arguably the best pitcher. So yeah, we did it, and it makes them look like they didn't settle, but Fans are much smarter than that. But if you're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks, sometimes a few will all of a sudden become too many. And as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, but no, you're good. You live nearby. You can make it home. It's no big deal. Besides, what are the odds that you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, your job, you total your car. You could kill someone. Everyone knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, plan ahead to get a ride. Uber and Lyft exist. It only takes one choice to change your life or someone else's life forever. Drive sober or get pulled over.
So now we thought it would be a really interesting and cool idea to do a little bit of Q&A, give you guys the opportunity to ask us some questions based on, all the craziness that's been going on surrounding Red Sox Nation. Uh, I'm very excited for some of these questions. It was interesting to read through some of them, and now it's our chance to answer them. So we'll start off with in my opinion, the best one we got. It's my man Dan. And he said, "What the blank is going on?"
Man, we've been asking the same thing, Dan.
That's why it was my favorite, because it's so true. It's so
Yeah.
true.
We wish we had the answers. We wish we knew. We've been trying to figure it out. Hopefully, the Red Sox are just kind of building this team like the way they see maybe championships in the future, but not the immediate future, like 2024, 25, 26. I know that seems very far away, but I don't know. I wish I had an answer.
Me too. I really have no clue. If you listen to yesterday's episode, we're hoping for a plan. We're hoping for some sort of direction, but hopefully that can be answered in the next few months. I don't think so, but hopefully, Dan, hopefully. And then we got football season. He said, "Are the Red Sox trying to win, or are they getting ready to sell?" I hope they're trying to win. I think so. With the selling stuff, I've seen a lot of people talk about it on Twitter. From all the indications from Sam Kennedy in this front office, this ownership group is all invested in what they're doing right now with the Boston Red Sox and winning another championship. That's all that's come out. That's all we know. So that's all I guess I can say.
I mean, it depends who you ask, right? Because if you ask anyone in the Red Sox organization, they'll tell you that they're trying to win. And I don't want to say that they're trying to lose by any means, because I genuinely think that Chaim Bloom is sitting here thinking that these moves are going to get fans excited. But I don't think they're going to sell this team. I don't think John Henry will ever sell the Boston Red Sox. I know that fans specifically this offseason have been calling for that. But I mean, if you look, it doesn't look like they're trying to win, I guess you could say. I know a lot of fans are like, what is going on? You've had all this other interest in other players. You had the money to bring in better players than you've brought in the last few weeks, but I don't know. I wish I had a better answer for that too, because I don't think it's black and white. I don't think it's yes or no, and I just wish we just want some clarity. We said that this week too. We just want some darn clarity when it comes to this team.
And Cole Kayer Ford asked a similar question, but I kind of want to change it up a little bit. He said, if Devers is not extended by spring training, how he phrased it is, should there be a legitimate push for Red Sox fans for John Henry to sell the team? I'm going to spin it in the way, should there be a legitimate push for Chaim Bloom to be fired? And I think if you allow Devers to walk away, and if you've been listening to this podcast for the last year or so, I love Chaim Bloom. I don't love him as much as I used to, but I would say yes. The two players that you phrased as cornerstones and franchise players of this team, you just allow them to walk out the door, and that's not only not keeping your word with Red Sox Nation, but that's also losing the credibility of the fans. And when that starts to happen, that, especially with a market like Boston, especially with a team like the Boston Red Sox, one of the most historic teams in Major League Baseball, that's something that you can't really come back from. And I think if it gets to that point, I think Chaim Bloom should be fired.
To answer the original question, I just don't think ownership cares about what is being said by fans, and I think that's been made very clear with Mookie, with Xander, with John Lester, with Bogarts, and now with Devers. But it would be nice if they would just sit back, maybe open their phones, look at their mentions on Twitter, and just think, wow, okay, maybe we should do something that would actually please the fans. But I personally don't think that it would do anything, unfortunately. But and then to answer your spin on it, Jake, I mean, I think that I said this was a very important offseason for Chaim Bloom, and I think he's blowing it. I know that at some point you have to look at, is he being the fall guy for the front office? Is he just kind of the scapegoat? But at the same time, if you were brought in here to make these kinds of decisions, you need to have some sort of backbone and be like, this is what we're doing. This is what the fans want. This is what we've told them. We can't just keep doing this to them. And no, it's not going to be another Dave Dombrowski, but it needs to be somebody who's going to make a big move like a Bogarts. So I mean, I think he's on borrowed time with the Red Sox. I don't know if that means opening day. I don't know if that means through the end of the season, but especially when it comes to Devers, I don't know. I think fans just will burn the city down if Devers does not get extended, which we've talked about at length that we're not the most confident that will happen. But I mean, under Bloom's watch, Mookie's been gone. You trade Hunter Renfroe for Jackie Bradley Jr., then you end up releasing him. You trade for Eric Hosmer, you release him. You DFA Jeter Downs, who was a part of the key piece in that Mookie Betts trade. You let Bogarts go. You let JD Martinez and Evaldi walk for nothing. You trade Christian Vasquez without a clear plan. It just doesn't look good for the most part. And I think, if he's going to build this farm system, great. Like, yes, there's a lot of prospects. There's a lot of reason to be excited for the future. But you have the future in front of you with Devers, and you had it with Bogarts. So I think he's on borrowed time here.
And I think, I'll also answer the first question as well. I think if that is the case, we need answers. Like they got to show their face. They at least got to say something. And it can be the all scripted out answer, but tell it to us straight.
Yeah.
If you're not gonna pay these homegrown talents that fans love and pay lots of money to get shirts and jerseys to have them and wear them around on the back of their back, if you're not at least just going to give them an answer or a reasoning why that isn't, just fluffing them off, then how can you expect people to support the franchise? And, there are those diehard fans. There are those fans like you and I who will still still show up at the ballpark, will still invest in the team. But it's just really tough to have confidence that there's going to be a winning direction for a team that has been one of the most winning teams, in the last 10 to 20 years. And, I think if it gets to that point, fans just deserve answers. Fans deserve some sort of clarity on why homegrown talent is not being kept. But then we got a last question, and I don't know who this guy is, and I don't know who the heck he thinks he is, but some guy named producer Derek. Who the heck, who dare, how
Never
dare
heard
you?
of
Like,
him.
who do you think that you are trying to comment on our? No, anybody can comment on there. Anybody
He probably
can
doesn't
comment on
even listen to
replies.
the show.
He definitely doesn't. I don't think so. Tell
Yeah.
him that I said, how dare you?
I will. I'll shoot him a text.
All right, bet. And then we figured, that we would end, this, not only show but this year, just reflecting on, some of our favorite parts of this last year, not even season. I feel like this last year has been rough in terms of just the overall Red Sox as the baseball team and the news that's been coming out with them. But in my opinion, I think that we did a really incredible job of, not only 5 days a week, providing good content and good information, but also doing our best to, bring on some of the biggest voices in Red Sox Nation, whether it's, people on Twitter, whether it's some of the beat reporters, some prospects, some former players. And, also, one other thing that, was a little bit lost in everything that happened throughout the season was we posted and we still got a lot of content out there throughout the lockout. That was not easy. I think, we got to give ourselves a pat on the back for, still being able to, talk about fun things and, have these fun guests on, even though there was absolutely nothing going on in the baseball season or at all. And, there's a lot of great podcasts that did the same exact thing, but I'm really proud of what we did this past year.
Yeah, I am too. And especially, there were times when you and I weren't able to make an episode last minute and we didn't hesitate. We picked each other right up and we're like, I got you. It's no problem. And you mentioned the lockout and some of our guests too, which I don't think many people realized. And I was impacted by the lockout too, that there was only so many things they could talk about because they were employed by MLB or they were some sort of rights holders, and they couldn't even use pictures. They couldn't talk to players. Like, they were shut out from a lot of what their job entails. So to be able to just get them on and just talk about baseball and maybe get a little more of their personality to shine through, I thought was really, really cool too. And I'm excited for 2023 with the podcast. I mean, I don't know if I'm excited about this team, but I'm really excited to see, where this goes, who else we have on. If we continue to cover Woo Sox games and maybe finds a place that's open on a Friday night past 10 p.m. when the game is over, when we're hungry and we're thirsty. But I don't know how, if we missed an episode this year, maybe once or twice, but I feel like through the dreaded season, even though I think it was June, where they gave us all that hope and they couldn't stop winning in June. And we're like, this is it. This is where they turn things around and things just got progressively worse. I think, I think we did a good job. And I think it's okay for us to be proud of ourselves. And a team that wasn't very good, a team that has brought us joy our whole lives, was making us angrier most days and happier, that we were still able to bring people news, reaction, analysis. And I love everyone who's commented and wants to interact with us, whether that's on YouTube or on Twitter, and just give us, their feelings too, because we're all feeling what I feel is the same way. And we see most of your comments. If we don't reply to them, we try to reply to at least like them, so that we're not ignoring you. But we absolutely love the comments that we get. Some of you have wild theories that I just absolutely love. I I love where your mind is at, and hopefully that continues in 2023, because hopefully there's more moves to be made. We want to talk more. We want to talk positive things about this Red Sox team. We don't want to talk about these, oh, we would have liked this signing 4 years ago, 5 years ago. We want to talk about an exciting move that's going to get fans amped up and fans excited about this team, because we want you to be excited about this team.
Amen. And, it was a lot of fun to, not only be able to go to some Woo Sox games and some Sea Dogs games and see some of those prospects, but also like preseason, being able to talk to some of those younger guys and seeing them flourish, and then being able to talk to them again after the season. I thought that was the coolest part, and, the relationships that we were able to make. But one question that I did want to end this episode on, that I just realized that I forgot to mention, is from Moss Chops. They said, what are the personal ambitions of Jake and Lauren for 2023? I'll start off. For me right now, my goal is to get back into baseball. For those of you who didn't know, outside of recording this podcast, I worked for a indoor football team, and most recently left that organization. But my goal is to get back into baseball. Would love to work for a minor league or major league baseball team, and just overall put on my vision board this year: Super Bowl, MLB All-Star Game, and World Series. So really hoping to see if I can find a way to, whether I go or whether I work, I'm hoping to get to all three of those. But how about you, Lauren?
So I could tell you like the basics, like eat better, commit more time to the gym. But my big thing for 2023 is just to be more present. I feel like it's very easy to get wrapped up in our phones and work and not really be present with where you are. And I really want to make a conscious effort in doing that, because there's only so much time we have left on this earth, right? Like, our loved ones are getting older, and I want to be able to be more present, even if it's just going to dinner with a friend, even if it's just watching a movie with Derek. And it's just something that I've noticed a lot, especially the last few months, where I haven't been as present as I want to be. So I want to do that, and I want to read more, because I love reading, and I'll tell you, I don't have time, but that's just an excuse. So be more present, read more, and then go to the gym more, because that's just, I say that every year, but we'll do it this year.
I agree with those three. Absolutely. I those are some of my resolutions, but I think, we're in the same boat as every single person in America. We want to go back to the gym on January 1st. But we hope that, everybody enjoys these last few days of 2022 are able to enjoy it with some loved ones or some friends. And as always, we greatly appreciate all the support on this podcast. But whether you listen to a second or just interacted with one of our tweets, we really do appreciate it. And we're so excited for 2023 to make that next year even better. But we greatly appreciate everybody making Locked On Red Sox their first listen of every single day. Now make sure to make your second listen and check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports Today. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Also, make sure to follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. The Q&A that you just heard? Well, we got all of those answers or those questions from Twitter. So if you want to not only stay up to date with the Red Sox, but also stay involved with the podcast, we post questions or what guests we're going to have on. We try to do our best to make this the most fan engaging podcast that there is out there. But you can also follow myself on Twitter. It's at Jake Iggy. And also Lauren is La, 3 laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But to end this one for 2022, boy, this is weird. Let's go Sox. Have a good one.